Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Tsinghua University.
Okay, so shall we start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I will take the time. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon to our students from all over the world. So this evening, I will share some of my ideas about the media's roles in the poverty alleviation in China, which is a very interesting topic. And we can discuss quite a lot about media, about something that you are quite familiar with, you are using every day. But let me start from a picture. So I think most of our Chinese colleagues and Chinese students are very familiar with this picture. This picture named "I Want to Go to School" is quite a popular name with a very popular face in the history of China's poverty alleviation. This picture or this photo was taken like 30 years before. During that time, China is was just in the progress of the very early years of reforming and opening. And at that time, the foundation of Chinese young's development were trying to encourage more and more people, focusing on the poor in the rural area, in the middle and west of China, especially the teenagers. So some of the teenagers, they stand in a very tough situation, not only living situation, but also the study situation. So the journalist took the photo of this young girl who showed quite a lot of curiosity to the strangers and also to the knowledges. Even in a very poor situation, the teenagers still showed their quite strong willing to study further. I think most of Chinese who know this picture are quite touched whenever at that time or right now. So this photo and this girl were very popular in contemporary China. Why I started from this picture? You will know that one of a shoot of a journalist, of a photographer, can touch the nation and can try to encourage more and more people pay attention to the poverty, to the rural area. So from then on, many people donated to the foundation and trying to encourage and help more and more generations of teenagers to step outside of the rural areas to go to study further. And I think most of them have much more opportunities of study or learning further. So that calls the question, how to understand media in poverty alleviation? Of course, you will say media is very important, but how to describe the importance of a kinds of tools appeared everywhere and appeared anytime in your life? That's an academic question. So I will divide it into 4 dimensions of the media. Media as technology, media as platform, media as a profession, and media as social function, one of the social functions. To talk about the media as a technology, you may recall several years before when you don't have the cell phone, you don't have the smartphone. Sometimes you have BP. Sometimes you have television. Sometimes you read newspapers. So from newspaper, actually from the very beginning, the oral communication, from the songs, from the histories, and then in the 18th centuries, we have newspapers. In the 20th centuries, we have radio, we have television, and right now we have social media. And the social media, and the using of social media spread everywhere. So the development of media technology represents the development of technology used by individuals. So as the development of the media as technology, and we will understand that more and more people, individuals, they can use media to express their feeling, to express their opinions much more freely than before. Secondly, media as a platform. Media is not only just a technology, and smartphone is not just a smartphone. When you share your ideas in Twitter, Facebook, Weibo, WeChat, or you give some feedbacks to like the video website, TikTok, Bling Bling, and you will find that actually you are joining a public sphere. In that public sphere, many people share ideas. So the media provides a space for the exchange of ideas, sharing the information and public feedback. I think that would be much more important as a platform than as a technology. And you will understand one of the things, technology always be used by people. So only the ration of the people can cause the technology much more smart. So in the platform which was built by media, people can benefit from the media, but not just only like that. Go further, you will say many people, all we call journalists, correspondents, editors, they are profession in the media. Journalists, editors, correspondents, they have their very typical skills, very typical education, and very typical social functions in the modern society. Actually, from the very beginning of the journalism, the people who take it as a career, they understand that there is some boundaries, there is some elites of these kinds of group people. So these people, they are quite free, but they are quite disciplined work. They should obey some rules. They should understand in any time that this is a very important information tools and is quite an important support of the modern society. So media also as social function. So the media presents facts, tells stories, supervises or help the government and the policymakers, and then they also provided the constructive contents. If many people will think that it's quite important for media as a watchdog, that's correct. But media is not just only a watchdog. Media can provide some solution. So that will cause another topic that I will raise later, why media are focusing on accurate journalism, solution-based journalism, because media's function are quite a lot, beyond the watchdog. They can play much more optimistic or much more constructive. So technology, platform, profession, one of the social functions. These are 4 dimensions to understand media, especially in the poverty alleviation. Why these functions are in the poverty alleviation? Why the media needed in the process of poverty alleviation? I will show you several pictures. If you see the pictures, you will feel, I think most of us will feel very sad, but it's not quite a long history. All the photographers were taken like in the middle of 1990s in China. And we would think like more than 20 years before, some rural area of China still in a very tough situation of the living standards and the education status. So in quite a long history of the poverty alleviation in China, poverty alleviation is always a social undertaking, which means that most of the people in a society should serve quite a lot and try to understand this real situation of the poverties in different areas. Even you are in the metropolis. So media shows the real facts of the poverty in different areas. They are not just telling stories. The purpose of telling stories is trying to influence your ideas. So the shaping of ideas played a very fundamental role in poverty alleviations. It's trying to get some consensus to have the most important agreement of the society that we need to fight against the poverty. And this is quite a long time war to fight against the poverties in China. Fortunately, media did it. So the shaping of the ideas of fighting against the poverty was quite successful since the very beginning of People's Republic of China. So the media can tell different kinds of stories. The story of poverty alleviation most vivid. And despite the synthesis of poverty. And you may understand that why we are quite interested and we pay much more attention of ourselves to poverty alleviation, because it's quite existing just near us. So this is the social responsibility to help people or to solve the problem of poverty in the same country. So the stories will raise the empathy or will cause the feeling of the people to help poverty. And fourth, media can also play a very important role to get facts and information and the feedbacks most efficiently and continue to offer solutions. Sometimes the cause of poverty is the lack of information. Can you imagine in a very long village in quite far from the metropolis, the people cannot get information, cannot get enough information and the modern information coming from the modern society. So because of that, they don't understand how to develop themselves. They just use their only skill to serve by them, to support themselves. So media can build a bridge. One of the bridge is the modern society, is the metropolis, is the science and the technology. And on the other side, you will find that the people who need it, So that village, the information village, is quite important. In journalism and communications, we are always discuss about information gap. We are very concerned, worried about that we have some information or knowledge gap between the rich and the poor, between the advanced and the disadvantaged, between different kinds of countries, different kinds of groups in different society. So that's quite important to make the media as a bridge that get informations, get facts from the poverty and the feedbacks from the metropolis efficiently and continuously. So that's the reason that the media needed in the process of poverty alleviation. And we were trying to figure out the functions and the roles of different kinds of media. And I will list several kinds of media to you. The first is what we call traditional media. Why we call traditional media? What do we mean traditional media? I think the students coming from the major of journalism and communications must understand. Traditional media means the media which is quite different with social media, which means that newspaper, journals, television, radio, this kind of media was organized by professional group, and it's kind of very limited resources of the society. So traditional media played a quite important guidelines work in the society. When we talk about the poverty alleviation, we think that the traditional media play quite an important role in the past, like more than half a century from the early years of 1920s. Because the total 20th century was the century of traditional media. So the authority and the influence of traditional media enabled it to better guide of public opinion. So how the society, how the public shaping their opinions and trying to understand the complexity of the poverty, that function belongs to traditional media. So you will read editorials, you will read features, you will see very special reports coming from the television, and you will hear the discussion and the chat room from the radio to discuss about the poverty. So in any time, when you get information from the traditional media, you will always get the topic. So traditional media has very strong explanatory efforts and explains policies in depth. Because the traditional media has lens, has enough space. If you read newspaper, if you read journal, if you see television, you will find that you can post your time. You can get much more time. You can put much more time on the content. So the traditional media have enough lens to discuss about one story and to get very objective and very balanced reports coming from different resources. And also traditional media is more professionalism in providing objective and balanced content, because most of the journalists and correspondents, they were trained. They were trained from the school. They were trained from the editing desk. They know how to be objective and balanced journalist who get enough information and go to the place, the poor place, the rural place, and step by step, hand by hand to get information. So enough resources. So depth stories, the facts, and the balanced information. They are the request, the demands to the traditional media journalist. And also you will find the traditional media has a larger space for more information on poverty alleviation from the perspective of both time and space. You can follow a story for quite a long time, and I will show you an example. And from the example, you will see a very interesting topic that even people who trained by the journalistic professional, they can go to some place and play a very stick role and keep very long time work to trying to discover more facts to organize a much more interesting or touching story. So the interaction between traditional media and the decision-making departments is close, always at the policymakers. And you will find in any country, in China, in the United States, in Russia, in Japan, in the European Union countries, the policymakers pay much more attention on traditional media. They think their reminds, their civilians, and then their stories will trying to encourage some policy makers to do the work or trying to recorrect it or advise to the policymakers. So I will give you some sample. For example, we have 3 pictures shows different kinds of traditional media's role. One of the pictures is coming from the CCTV 13, which is a news channel of CCTV, of China Central Television. And the 2 anchors are trying to tell stories of a Hong Kong teenager who spent 6 years in Guizhou province to do the work of poverty alleviation. She was touched by a story from traditional media, and she traveled a lot in the poor area in Guizhou province, and she decided to stay there for 6 years, and that's really good story. So tell her story is trying to encourage more and more teenagers to serve or volunteers or trying to make much more connection between their careers and the poverty alleviations. And the Hong Kong people, she comes from Hong Kong. So, which means that the different areas of China, whenever in North, in South, or in Hong Kong region, all the teenagers should take this work as one of their volunteers, one of their service to the nation and to the world. The middle picture is a very interesting picture, which called that the TV anchors. They went to the poor area in Inner Mongolia and cooperated with the local officials and trying to do some public advertisement to introduce their local products and encourage more and more people to buy their local products and build the connection between the modern society and the poor areas. So if there is an efficient channel from the modern society, from the markets to the rural area, which means that the rural area can much more easily to join the society, the marketing, and will make themselves rich. This is a quite inner motion to enhance their living standards. And one of the English picture shows that this is a picture coming from China Daily. That's a feature, that's a groups of picture to tell the war against the poverty alleviation. And if you go more, you can have we can have several minutes to see a very interesting video, which is coming from CGTN. This video shows young guys coming from New Zealand. He is quite interesting about Chinese poverty alleviation, and he find that there is a quite interesting way that encourage the local products and local characteristics to make the local people rich and fight against poverty. And we can show that.
China is home to 55 officially recognized ethnic minorities, living all across this vast country. I'm here in Dongshan Minority Autonomous County to see just how they're using lamb and potato to improve their livelihoods. Ever since China set a mammoth 8-year goal way back in 2012 of eliminating absolute poverty by 2020, the country's been hard at work. One of China's many counties originally listed as poverty-stricken was right here, Dongshan Minority Autonomous County, somewhere way up here in Gansu province. As you probably guessed by the name, this place, covering an area of about 1,500 square kilometers, is home to the Dongshan people, numbering about 600,000, half of whom live right here. In 2013, nearly 1/3 of the population here were considered to be living under poverty. Last month, Dongshan Minority Autonomous County was removed from the poverty list. So how did they do it? One way was through food. The Dongshan are agricultural people, with one of their main crops being potato. It's no wonder then that the picturesque rolling mountains of the county are perfect for growing spuds. The yield and quality of potatoes here has improved significantly over the last few years, thanks to poverty alleviation training, which taught the locals how to better farm the vegetable.
它种下去怎么切怎么预防病虫害这是一个。然后过程中呢，出苗的阶段的时候，我们是要覆土呢，还是要破膜让它生长出来还有过程中的除草、打药、施肥当然吃的都是农家肥。包括后期收获，我们马上还要再进行采用。就是说这些过程呢，会对它的这个土豆的品质和产量有很大的提升。
那你今天回家会怎么做这些？
去家里面吃这个柿子片，如果洗干净，加一个土豆丝也行了，土豆片也行了。
那可以，听起来很好吃。
The Dongshan people have many ways of cooking the mighty spud, including spicy potato slices, julienne potato, and this ancient method of baking potato in a sealed bed of embers. They call it iwowo.
他们就是那时候就是没羊肉没鸡肉呗，现在就是条件一把我们总体来说是我们中国肥了呗，全部的老百姓都肥了呗，肥了嘛就是这个想吃鸡肉的话烤鸡肉，想吃羊肉的话烤羊肉，现在就是烤土豆的话烤土豆。
Grandpa Chi is famous for his traditional baked potatoes, attracting guests from far and wide.
Okay, let me stop that here. So that's very interesting topic. Food, right? Potatoes, and later you will see lamb and the spud. And you will see very interesting thing that actually this is a video which was created by a New Zealand teenagers who can speak very smooth Chinese. And he went to the poor area, the former poor area, and trying to figure out the password of the Chinese local place to fight against poverty. And he found it. So he created a video. And the traditional media, CGTN, can use the video as one of a very special program to let the world, to let the audience understand that some kinds of difference is the diversity some kinds of different ways, the diversity to the poverty alleviation. And we always welcome you guys who have the opportunity and in the future that can also go to Chinese rural areas to shoot the videos. And many people will say, but we don't have the channel, we don't have the connection of CGTN or CCTV. How can I post my short videos? How can I introduce my programs to find the real story in Chinese rural area? That calls the other thing, which we call social media. Of course, you know social media very well, even better than me. So social media provide a more popular space of expression of poverty alleviation. And you will find that there is not only stories, but also opinions, their expressions, the feelings, and sometimes the comparative ideas. We compare the different developing countries, like in China, in some countries from Africa, some countries from Latin America, what we call the developing countries. We develop together. So how we can share the experience of the poverty alleviation. So social media provide a much more popular space, like Facebook, Twitter, many different things, Instagram, like YouTube. And also, social media can better advocacy the public. The advocacy means encourage people to put themselves to trying to understand, to get more information, to understand the livelihood of the poverty, and trying to change the situation, not only in China, but also in all over the world. So the advocacy work is one of a very important social function of the social media. And also, of course, the public can also publish more information regarding poverty alleviation and exchange views through social medias. We agree with you, we don't agree with you. We say right, we say wrong, and we repost many things. And many hashtags and many interesting topics can express in Facebook, in Twitter, in WhatsApp. So you will find different kinds of groups in different kinds of social medias. You join a group, you discuss, you talking a lot, you can share your stories. Of course, maybe you will face some dispute or argument. They will be fine, because this is the nature of social media. And also, you will find that people in poor areas can also participate in poverty alleviation and the social governance through social medias. So, which means that this is not the only right of the people coming from the rich place, but also we encourage more and more people in poor areas who stand outside of the poverty. They are very brave to use the social media to express themselves, because they are also independent, and this is equal society, and many people, all of the people have the right to use social media. So when we use social media, they also use social media. They will provide information to say, you see, we have very good potatoes, right, in a video. And you see, we will have very good lambs, but we don't know how to import that. Please buy it. We can bargain. We can discuss about the channel. We can talking about the local market. We can encourage much more modern industries in the rural area. So the function and the roles of social media is quite a lot. And in China, you will find many social media like Xinlang, Weibo, Chinese Twitter. We also have the very typical specified on poverty alleviation. So they have the very typical website. And if you go to Weibo, if you go to WeChat, if you search in Chinese, you will find many informations coming from the rural area, coming from the ideas of poverty alleviation. And on the way of poverty alleviation, the information of alleviation, the showing of the new farmers, and the specified of different counties, and the college of new farmers. And of course, we have eBay. The eBay products which coming from the rural areas. So that's what we call the accurate poverty alleviation, which accurate to different counties and which we accurate to different kinds of models of the poverty alleviation. So that's the second, social media. I will not waste too much time on social media because you know that very well. And the third one will be the function and the roles of international communication. Of course, the Chinese poverty alleviation, firstly, is the work, the priority of China itself. But you know, in the past, like more than 70 years, the People's Republic of China solved the problem of poverty. And we have many kinds of different models and stories. We are very eager to tell the stories to the world. It's not only what we want to get the agreement, but also we want to exchange and share appearance of the different countries' history. Maybe we can get much more positive experience, and maybe we can help the other countries to solve some unique problem. So the China story of poverty alleviation is a very internal part of the construction of Chinese national image. And if many people think China is developing, the first step of developing is to fighting against poverty. So if you check Xi's keywords on poverty alleviation, you will find that people, development, shake off, targeted poverty alleviation. The 2 insurance and the 3 guarantees are quite popular in Chinese international communications. And when we tell the stories of Chinese poverty alleviation, we can tell the stories well. Telling the stories well can itself provide new samples of the international committee to the world, especially to the UN construction and WTO construction and World Bank construction. I think development is a very important or priority of the 2020 strategy of the United Nations, and right now 2030 strategy, developing strategy of the United Nations. So how China can play a positive role in the global development? Maybe we can provide some kinds of new samples. And we can also solve the questions coming from different countries. Some countries, some people are not quite familiar with Chinese situation, and they will argue, and they will discuss, and they will raise questions. Of course, the Chinese stories of poverty alleviation is the specific component of a committee with the shared future of mankind. So that's the sample. And through Chinese poverty alleviation stories, developing countries can obtain relevant and effective information. Maybe this model it cannot popular or cannot used in different countries, but the information or some kinds of relevant stories, some kind of relevant messages can also be spread in different areas, like in Africa, in ASEAN, in Latin American, and in some countries that which they need the information and are willing to share information with China. So international communication is not just shaping Chinese image. International communication is also the responsibility of a community with a shared future of mankind. So you will also see a very interesting 3 minutes video that there is a very famous scholar, Mr. Kuhn, to trying to tell the reason or try to explain the Chinese poverty alleviation strategy to the world.
I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn, and here's what I'm watching. Those foreigners who may question President Xi Jinping's motives and goals may be surprised to learn that he considers poverty alleviation to be his most important task. It's his signature program, staking his political capital on success. To appreciate Xi's driving motivation, one must understand the context of this special year, 2020, which has been long tapped to usher in the moderately prosperous society, the first of the two centenary goals that compose what Xi calls the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation as the Chinese dream. The first centenary goal, the moderately prosperous society, reflects the fact that the CPC's 100th anniversary is in 2021. The original formulation of the moderately prosperous society defined it in quantitative terms: to achieve GDP and per capita income of urban and rural residents by 2020 as double that of 2010. She said, "We cannot announce the complete construction of a moderately prosperous society on the one hand, if the living standards of tens of millions of people, on the other hand, are below the poverty line." It was a powerful prescription that set national policy, made more challenging, of course, by the pandemic. Whether because of geographic isolation in remote mountain villages, or because they didn't have sufficient education or jobs, or because they were old or infirm, no matter how much China's economy would grow, no matter how large China's GDP and income per capita would become, these intractably poor would remain intractably poor. I did not appreciate all that is required for precision poverty alleviation until I started visiting poor regions, especially those remote mountain villages. I met poor villagers and heard their stories, those who had come out of poverty through micro businesses, those who had been relocated to suburban areas, and those who, ill or infirm, needed social support, and those who, though still in extreme poverty, still refused to move from their ancestral lands. And for those foreigners who marvel at how China contained COVID-19, the common root of China winning the war to contain the coronavirus and China winning the war to eradicate extreme poverty is the CPC's governance structure and organizational capacity. This does not mean that there are no trade-offs. Thus, to comprehend China's poverty alleviation program is to comprehend how China's party-led governance system actually works. This is especially important at this time of heightened awareness of China's increasing role in international affairs and the increasing sensitivities to it. I'm keeping watch. I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn.
Okay, so go back to Mr. Robert Kuhn's story. You will find that this is the meaning of international communication. Firstly, international communication is not a country tell its stories by its own perspective, but tell the stories of the global perspective. So poverty alleviation is quite a global work, and many kinds of global organizations are very concerned about that. So if you talk about the poverty alleviation, you need to try to answer the questions coming from the different countries, coming from different groups. So that's also, we need to do the work of international communications. Secondly, who is the fingers to tell the story, or who is the right, or who is the best storytellers? I think the observers are quite good storytellers, like Mr. Kuhn. He observed China for quite a long time. And for like in the past 20 years, he wrote many stories and many articles and many essays to research, to analyze the Chinese political system, economy, and then he got a very special experience to introduce China. Sometimes much better than Chinese colleagues. So that's international communication. Chinese stories, the Chinese stories of poverty alleviation are not just the stories benefit Chinese audience and the readers, but also can benefit to the international audience. So the from the traditional media to the social media and then the international communications, what can media do in poverty alleviation? If you are a journalist, or if you are willing to be a journalist, be a blogger, be a professional in media, you need to focus on this page, because you will find that media can find the stories to tell the unknown stories of poverty alleviation. If media tell the stories of the unknown people or the unknown area, they also tell the diversity of the world to the audience and the readers. People cannot satisfied with their, not with their own life, but also trying to understand that there is different kinds of situation, different kinds of opinion, and maybe they struggle for another target that you already solve. So finding stories are very important for media. The social mobilization mobilize various social forces to participate in poverty alleviation. You know, actually, at the very beginnings of People's Republic of China, we still face the very serious problem of the poverty. So the war of fighting against the poverty lasted quite a long time, even lasted the contemporary history of the modern China. So it needs more and more people or social forces or social committee to join that, to participate in the work and the process of poverty alleviation. And also in the process of poverty alleviation, because media can shape many different kinds of agenda. So the conception also can be constructed by media using some more modern and scientific information to assist the poor and the poverty areas or poverty alleviation teams, which is sent by the local county, the province or central government, in understanding the better way to work, which is the efficient way to solve the problem, to fight again, to win the war. I think media can exchange the information. So because of that, media can play as a role in the participation in governance. Sometimes we'll say governing by news. Governing by news means that if we fight, when we are in the process of fighting against the poverty, the media can influence the order of decision-making, sometimes construct the logic of decision-making and allow policymakers to know more details or more information and have more rooms of dialogue with the public, with the people who want to serve for the poverty alleviation or the people who in the poor livelihood. And they also build some models to set a better example or make ways of for the constructive and the solution-based journalism. And then what can media do in poverty alleviation? We can conclude in 4 words. The first, what we call agenda setting. Media cannot influence or cannot decide how you think, but media can decide what you think. If all the medias, whenever the social media or the traditional media, they understand the series and the importance of the poverty alleviation. So every day, you will read the stories coming from the different rural areas to talking about the poverty and poverty alleviation that set the very efficient agenda to the society and make all the public to discuss about the agenda or share the different opinions of the agenda, which will cause more and more advocacies of the poverty alleviation. And of course, the media can also create typical characteristics. The typical characters coming from the poverty alleviation, maybe he's just graduated from universities and volunteers to work in the poor area. Maybe he or she is a very senior official who has a very good experience and know how to fight against the poverty in different rural areas, but they are unknown to the public. So media can create the typical characters and make the society know them, praise them, and encourage more and more people to learn from them. And of course, media can keep watching. And you will know there is a very famous word called media is a watchdog. Media can play a surveillance work to the society. They can raise and call the risk to the public. They can notice or emphasize the differences or the path of the development of the society. The media keep watching in the poverty alleviation, and media can also do some civilian work to fight against some like bankrupt in the poverty alleviation and trying to make the society much more healthy. And in the areas of social media, in the time when traditional media and the social media and international communication exist together, different kinds of media can also raise dispute and trying to find solutions from the discussion. And in the discussion, I think when expertise, when the public, when the officials, and even when the poor people join the discussion, one of a very important way is they're all the only target or only purpose of all the peoples is trying to find the solution of the poverty alleviation, find the most efficient way to fight against the poverty. So that means that, by the way, there is one of a very important thing. What does the media mean for the poor? We are talking about media, and most of the media used by the people who living in a quite modern society in the metropolis. But in some poor areas, it's very difficult for them to using the modern media. But sometimes we think that the information poverty alleviation is also quite important. It's very important for us to observe the media use of the poor. If the poor people can use the media and the modern media, they can get much more information coming from different society or different areas. They can find the resources. They can find different advanced ideas. They can also get some scientific and technology informations, which is very useful to their to enhance their livelihood. So if you see that two pictures taken in the past 13 years, the first is like there is a very big river. Students who want to go to school cannot have any safe way or bridge on the river. So there's a very dangerous way to cross the river. And because the information get spread to the metropolis, and many people donated to the rural area, and at last there is a bridge. And when the bridge was built, the student can just safely cross the river and go to school. It's a very simple story, but these two pictures compared that the different situations 13 years before and right now. So information is a crucial part in the poverty alleviation. Media provides more possibilities and visions for the poor and make the people understand quite a lot of the process of poverty alleviation. So it's not only the people living in modern society need the media, especially the poor who fight against poverty in the rural area. They need media also, and they do need the media quite a lot. So let me conclude. From the traditional media to social media to international media, and from different perspectives of the media, information which come from the media is a very important tool for poverty alleviation. Information, when we talk about information or we talk about the message, information or message or piece of news themselves mean knowledge, idea, and vision. And sometimes we need to say that the poor area, during the poverty alleviation, knowledge ideas are very important as a weapon, as a tool to solve the problem. So finding the path to the poverty alleviation through the acquisition and shaping of information is also a very important way in the process of poverty alleviation. Fortunately, Chinese media play quite a positive role in the process. They successfully accompanied with the society to find a path to the poverty alleviation. So information is needed in anywhere, not only in the metropolis, not only in our class, but also in some rural area right now to fight against the poverty. The information help to form the social consensus and expand the political economy and the cultural support for poverty alleviation. So I think if we have much more enough information exchange and the information of poverty alleviation are much more popular to the global society, the problem will raise more and more people's attention than before. So shaping empathy and consolidating more social consensus is still quite an important work, not only right now, but also in the future. So, at last, media's role in poverty alleviation is quite important. So sometimes we will talk about the media governance, because we are talking about the modern governance of the Chinese society. When we want to build a modern system of the social governance, we need to pay attention to media's role. This is the new perspective of poverty alleviation, because media can can provide information to the society, because the media is a very important product of the modernization and the industrialization. During the modernization and during the industry, the modern media always play a very important power to push the society to develop. It determines the stories, policy logics, and they also shape the social identity through some stories, through the narratives, which is a very professional word in the media studies. Media is a very important foundation. It's a fundamental part of the modernization of national governance. If you trying to enhance the capability of the national or the social governance, I think you may pay attention to the media's role, as we said, as we discussed it just now. And we encourage more and more people who joined the journalistic work, the training of journalists, and the public media literacy can facilitate the poverty alleviation. So I think in quite a long time, in the past quite a long time, and in the future, if you want to make the society much more modern and much more advanced, we still need to pay attention to the media's role in poverty alleviation and other areas. So that will be very important work. So I think because of time limitation, I will stop here. And we work, I'm quite thank you, and you are welcome to ask your questions to me. Thank you very much. Okay, I find several questions coming from